Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Our next episode takes us to the Rocky Mountains in northwestern Montana, near the small town of Kalispell. The surrounding area is a combination of rugged granite mountains scattered with wooded valleys and prairies, making it a fertile area for ranching, farming, and wildlife, particularly bears. Many of the residents love being surrounded by nature and the scenic views it offers. One of the most enjoyable activities in the area is watching and interacting with local wildlife. Some of the visitors and residents even go as far as feeding the animals. This is the behavior that created the tragic scenario in today's episode. Barbara Paschke was a single 85-year-old woman living a short distance from town. Her house was positioned on an acreage surrounded by the aforementioned environment. She loved living there and enjoyed the peace of the area. She was so involved in the day-to-day lives of her neighboring animals that she began feeding many of them. She placed bird feeders around her property and kept them filled to attract the beautiful seasonal songbirds of the area. The chipmunks and squirrels also raided the feeders from time to time, but she enjoyed watching them too. In a way, many of her animal friends had become her best friends with regular visits. Barbara noticed the black bears would regularly fill their bellies at her feeders as well. Some of her neighbors did the same thing and would also enjoy the local wildlife show. Eventually, she started feeding the bears specifically. They enjoyed eating the millet and sunflower seeds. After some time of this practice, Barbara began to know the bears individually and started to develop a fondness for some of them. She had her favorites and regulars that she would feed special foods to from time to time. In 2012, authorities cited Barbara for illegally feeding the bears, but she did not decide to stop her hobby. On September 28, 2015, Barbara was up to her usual hobbies and chores. Toward evening time, she settled in for the night and began winding down. A young female black bear had somehow entered Barbara's house, unbeknownst to her. At some point in the evening, the young bear attacked Barbara. The bear savaged her arms and legs and also bit and clawed all over various vulnerable parts of her body. Her injuries were serious enough to immediately threaten her life. It is unclear how authorities were notified of the attack, but she was taken to the local area hospital for acute medical treatment. Authorities immediately started to catch and euthanize black bears in the area. They found several bears with substantial amounts of millet and sunflower in their gut. Neither sunflower nor millet are a natural growing food item in the local ecosystem. In fact, even after the attack, some neighbors continued to feed the bears, aggravating investigators and furthering the dangerous situation. They routinely have up to 35 phone calls about problem bears, meaning that there's obviously too much density for the small area, creating the conflicts between bears and humans. The black bear involved in the attack on Barbara has not been captured or killed. Authorities captured and killed the attacking female's bear's sister and understand the bear to be just over a year old at the time of the attack. In closing, Barbara loved nature and being close to animals. She also practiced an extremely dangerous habit for her and the bears. The local bears began to recognize her and her neighbors as a source of food and became habituated to the steady, easy-to-obtain diet. This causes the bears to look for people-originated food sources, instead of making them learn to compete in their natural environment for food. This behavior leads only to a dependent and hostile relationship with bears. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to the prestigious Rocky Mountains, to a little town called Ouray. The rigorous landscape consists of steep, boulder-strewn mountainsides with lush pine forests, the perfect environment for sightseeing, and black bears. Water resources are abundant as well as deer, elk, and various berry bushes and nuts for bears to eat and nurture their offspring from. A popular tourist destination, the Colorado backcountry is replete with people. Hikers, skiers, hunters, and campers frequently crowd the primitive areas bears prefer to live in, so sightings and confrontations are a possibility. Educated and experienced travelers are prepared with either firearms, bear spray, or both. Donna Munson was a 74-year-old single female retiree and widow who lived 4 miles north of town and enjoyed her space, as well as her local wildlife. Her husband had passed away about 14 years prior to her attack, so she was all alone, with the exception of her periodic renters. She navigated her property with the support of a walker and was losing her vitality to age. She befriended squirrels, birds, deer, elk, and even skunks, and frequently fed them from her porch or windows in her home. She even had visits from the local black bear population, and particularly enjoyed their visits. She would set out dog food and bird seed for the area animals to eat as she watched from the relative safety of her fenced-in elevated deck. Donna was too frail to carry the big bags of dog and cat food, so she engineered a pulley system that would allow her to lift the bags up to her deck. The animals essentially developed into her social interactions for each day, and she believed she understood them and had developed a personal rapport with them. They were her friends, and she believed she knew them well enough to trust them. As the years went on and she would see new individuals come and go, the authorities began to look closely at what was going on near her home. They cautioned her against the illegal act of feeding wildlife of all kinds, as well as the dangers of feeding bears. She became so accustomed to receiving their certified letters and phone calls instructing her to stop feeding animals at her home that she began ignoring the warnings and cautions. Authorities began building a case to file charges against Donna, but the wheels of justice turned very slowly and required time to accumulate evidence. Donna had also been informed that any bears seen feeding at her home would be euthanized. After all, it isn't only bears that can be dangerous once they get accustomed to regular feeding from a single source. Animals as peaceful in appearance as deer and elk have attacked people whenever they are no longer afraid of humans. Donna's neighbors had approached her on a few occasions after learning she was feeding the bears from her home. They expressed strong opposition to this practice, as they had been seeing more and more bears in their neighborhood and in the hills surrounding the area. Some of these bears had started to approach humans for food and even acting aggressively toward them. Neighbors reported seeing as many as 14 bears at one time on her property. Donna rented half of her home to several renters over the years and had even been overheard explaining how, when the end comes for her, she would prefer to go out with the bears. Donna was described as a sweet but eccentric animal nut by people who knew her or rented from her. Reportedly, her most recent tenant would not go outside at night due to being surrounded by bears from the area expecting food. Donna fenced in her porch after a renter with young children moved into her attached apartment, but was comfortable without the fencing prior to that. The fencing erected was shoddy at best and would not prevent a determined bear from entry. At one point, the bears became so desperate and demanding that Donna's car window was broken into and her seat was clawed and chewed up so that the bear could reach the french fries she left in her car overnight. Her vehicle had claw marks all over it from the bears, and her garage door was dented and scratched up from the same. About a year after her last renter moved out, Donna was alone in her house and enjoying her animal company as much as she could. 2 of the bears had been in a scuffle outside, and a smaller, younger bear had been wounded. Donna wasn't the type to let nature run its course when it came to her friends, so she spoke with a family member and indicated she had to go because one of the babies had been injured and she had to tend to it. That was the last time Donna spoke with anyone, as her relationship with the bears was about to take a fatal turn. Based on the evidence at the scene, on the evening of August 7, 2009, Donna had taken some food outside with her and was standing near a bear, probably feeding it and talking with it. The rickety fence made of 4x4-inch mesh wire separated her and the bear as she examined its wounds from the fight. It is not clear which bear struck Donna, but at some point a bear reached through the wire and swatted her across the head, rendering her unconscious. The blow lacerated her face and left large hematomas observed at her autopsy. A bear then dragged her from underneath the fence where her unconscious body was consumed by a 400-pound male black bear. Her walker remained inside the fence as a stark clue of the occurrence. The next morning, a local handyman showed up to complete some painting Donna had arranged for him. He saw her consumed corpse and notified authorities. Animal control officers shot 2 bears at Donna's house. The first, a 250-pound male, had no signs of having fed on Donna's body. The 400-pound male that was shot had tissue and bone from Donna's body in his gut. Authorities were not convinced of an attack, but the consumption was apparent. An autopsy revealed no heart disease, so she did not have a heart attack but died from trauma from the bear attack. In the state of Colorado since 2019, there have been at least 7 incidents of bears injuring humans. In nature, bears have to compete for feeding sources, and the weaker bears would die off due to lack of resources. When people feed them, this natural culling is biased to favor, even prefer, weaker or more aggressive bears. 2 people in the area have been attacked by black bears leaping from garbage bins, and bears have routinely been reported as raiding tents and backpacks searching for food due to familiarity. Wildlife officials have indicated that Coloradans have effectively been training bears to misbehave on a massive scale just to survive. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to the forested hills surrounding Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, USA. The area consists of rolling hills covered with dense forests of pine, sugar maple, black cherry, aspen, birch, white oak, hemlock, and ash. The ground cover is so thick you couldn't throw a rock through it. Not all of the area is like this, though, because in the valleys between the mountains, there are housing developments. Though the residents don't clear their lots, they are maintained and not like the brush on the hills. The state of Pennsylvania has around 13 million people, but is prime habitat for many animals, including black bears. In the fall, black bears need to consume around 20,000 calories each day to get ready for the winter hibernation. And with about 110 calories per acorn, bears have plenty to eat. This makes the bears very large and also allows for a very high carrying capacity. At 3 a.m. on October 4th in 2011, 44-year-old Richard Moyer, Jr., known as Rich, was getting ready to go to work at a local warehouse as his wife and 10-year-old son Josh slept upstairs. His half-husky and pit bull named Brindy was led outside to go potty and immediately ran near the woods around the house and started barking. This wasn't the usual bark. There was an urgency to Brindy's barking that let Rich know something wasn't quite right in the backyard. He grabbed a spotlight and started shining the light through the morning fog. He didn't immediately see anything concerning, but after a few seconds, Brindy came sprinting back toward him on the porch, followed closely by a very angry sow black bear. Before Rich could react, Brindy streaked into the house toward him, followed by the bear. Now, Richard Moyer, Jr. is a big man. He stands 6 feet 6 inches tall and weighs over 320 pounds. He's bigger than most bears. But this was one very angry mama. The only thing Rich could see while he wrestled with the bear was black fur in his face. The yelling and growling as well as the ruckus on the porch woke Rich's wife Angie. As she came down the stairs, she could see the bear on top of Rich, with Brindy acting as a distraction, charging in and out, holding her own. Just as Angie approached to help Rich, the bear knocked her to the floor of the porch. The sow then chomped onto her leg and dragged her outside onto the patio. Rich got back to his feet and staggered to the patio. He immediately saw the bear now on top of his wife attacking her. Rich dove into the fray by putting his head down so she wouldn't claw his face and jumping onto the bear. The distraction worked, but the bad part was that she was attacking Rich again, and this time she was going to kill him. She clawed him severely over his arms and head. Then she bit into his scalp. Rich could feel the sow tearing his hair from his head. She bit into the back of his head and tried to peel his scalp from his skull like you peel an orange. Rich was sure she was going to kill him. She bit his arm several times and then suddenly stopped. The sow slowly began ambling back toward the forest, leaving the couple and their dog confused and bleeding. Rich immediately calls his father, who is a retired truck driver. Senior listened in stunned trepidation as Rich panted and stammered that he and his wife were attacked by a bear in their house and were both injured. Like the caring father he is, he rushed to his son's house and was aghast at the sight. Rich was slouched in front of the kitchen sink, drenched in blood and hyperventilating. Richard could tell his son was beginning to go into shock, and Angie wasn't faring much better. The couple was taken to Harrisburg Hospital for treatment. Rich received 70 staples to close his wounds and put his scalp back together. He was bitten at least 20 different times. Angie had a chunk of flesh bitten from her butt, and she was bitten on her breast and her body. They were treated and released to loved ones to heal their wounds. About 5 hours after the attack, Richard finally realized how badly this situation could have turned out and broke down emotionally. Authorities attempted to catch the bear with a trap baited with donuts, but there was no source of information indicating if their attempts were successful. They indicated if they did catch it, it would be relocated as long as it's healthy. If it were sick or injured, or had rabies, then they would euthanize it. They believed that this bear was probably a sow bear with cubs, who believed the dog was a threat and was acting in defense of them. There are estimated to be 18,000 black bears in Pennsylvania currently, and there hasn't been a fatal bear attack there in over 100 years. Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. Check out our merch store link below this video.